Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome back. My name is Chantel, and I am your host for this show tonight. You are on with Always Be Reading, and this is our special Books with Friends. Tonight, I am joined by my friend Sean Campbell to discuss the third book in Toni Morrison's trilogy, her beloved trilogy called Paradise. This book, there's so much to talk about. I cannot wait to get the conversation started, and we're going to do so in a moment. But I want to situate this book in the history that it was written in. The first book in this trilogy, Beloved, really centered on remembering, and that was published in 1987. Then we moved to Jazz, that I think was centered around reinvention with the Great Migration that happened. And last, Paradise, which I think is a book about reckoning. Again, I'm happy that you're here with me. If you haven't done so already and subscribe to this channel, do so. I would love to have you here. And without further ado, I don't want to waste any time. I don't want to use any time. So I'm just going to welcome Sean right here. Thank you, Sean.
All right. Okay, Chantal, yes. I hope that you are now fully a member of the sun rises and sets on Toni Morrison. I know you've always respected her, but there comes a time to just fall completely in love with her, right?
Well, Sean, I would say that you have done something that no other human has gotten me to do. I've read, like, we started this journey last year in the fall, I think. And I shared with Sean when I invited him onto the show, and I said, "Oh, you can pick anything. You pick." And he picked Jazz and Toni Morrison, and my heart was like, "Oh," because as he said, although I love, respect, I own all her works, I picked up Beloved years ago, and then I put it down. I didn't finish it, and I didn't go back. And so I haven't read any Toni Morrison, to which he was like, "We have to correct that." Yeah. So I actually appreciate it, though, that you gave me Jazz first.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest kind of gift to me and the best starting point, actually. So thank you for that. And I know that that's out of order because it doesn't come first. But for me, it was the book that hooked me and kind of made me want to continue. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, you're certainly welcome. So a couple things that just stuck out when you said out of order. And as we look at it as a trilogy, is there an order? I know it's out of chronological order, but when you think about the deep issues that she discusses in these novels, it just occurred to me like the continuity and the perpetuation of these systems that cause all of this dysfunction. I wonder if there is an order. And I think about also what makes them a trilogy, Chantel. I think when I first talked about it, I was talking about love. We see the theme of love run through and how that love is distorted or humanized, really, right? It's just not this nice, clean, lovey-dovey, it's this beautiful sun and, rainbows. It's not that. It's messy. It is violent often. You said this is about reckoning. I see so many ways these books are connected. And I'm just kind of wondering your thoughts on that. I know we're going to talk about some specific things. Even journeys is one thing I'm wondering. Like, what are the different journeys? These havens, or homes. What is the definition of home? How do we make the home a home? And how do we protect the space of that home without perverting what the home is. I don't know. So there's just so many entry points.
There are so many, and I think that that's the most challenging part to even like get my thoughts together
Mhm,
for this conversation, because I'm like, ah, like here and here, could talk about here. But I have been sitting thinking about, especially because we read these books so close together, their connectedness. And I think at the heart, there's some things that I think are at the heart of it, of what she is trying to say. I think that these works, I do agree that, for anyone out there listening that maybe you haven't read all three, you don't have to read them in order. I don't think that that was the intent. Um,
mhm,
she intended them to be written in a way where you had to read them in order. And I think so much so that I think people might say, how are they related? Um,
right.
I think
Mhm,
might be a question that people have more so than, oh, yes, they're very related and interconnected. But I see the trilogy as it's a history. It's
mhm,
me, I'm like, this is it is the literary history of African Americans
mhm,
in America, in the times in which these works were situated. And most, I think, importantly, or I think most significantly, what stood out to me was women, such a huge focus on women, and the breadth of women that you see here. There's so many different types of women,
absolutely.
and sometimes, you don't see the variety and the depth of women in works, especially about Black women in these times. They're
Mhm,
much more stereotypical views of women. And I think the theme of also men looms just as large, in a way. I was like, let me just sit and put the woman down and think about the men and focus on the men. And when I
mhm.
did that, there's so much to talk about. But I also think it speaks largely on kind of this question of, what do you do when surviving is no longer your primary goal of the day?
Right. Right. Mhm,
And we see what that looks like, starting with Beloved, where there was an aspect that, even though it was the closest to slavery, right, just like
mhm,
fresh, but even in the freshness, I think that there, even in the proximity to being a slave, there
mhm,
was this difference, this distinct difference, that Sethi had a different type of life. There were different um, privileges or opportunities that existed than that didn't exist before. That Denver, her daughter, right,
mhm,
was even going to have even more of a different, And so as I think the years progress through the
mhm.
books, we get confronted with that question and what it looks like. So
I
yeah.
think I think that's an excellent point. And even as we move into jazz, what do you do when you no longer are focused on surviving? Yes,
Hmm.
and then what trauma do you bring with
Yes.
you from trying to survive?
Hmm.
Like, how does that
Hmm.
show up in your new
Hmm.
reality? And how do
Hmm.
we live out the pain of that in a space that's no longer even necessary?
That's
Obviously,
right.
with that thing, making sure her children, well, I don't know, in her case, that was still a threat. Now,
It
she
was
went
still
the
a
most
threat.
extreme,
It
but
was
had
still
she
a
not,
threat.
they would have been back there at Sweet Home.
Correct.
I think about Joe and his trauma without having a mother,
Right.
and then turning to a child for the relationship. So, like, just that need for acceptance and that
Yeah.
belonging thing,
Hmm.
and as a result trying to own it.
Yeah.
I think that shows up in this one. It is This one kind of hit me so differently this time. Like,
Hmm.
I honestly wept in the beginning. when I read the scene about the women running and then they're just, just shooting them off. And
Yeah.
it's probably on the one hand, because we've seen so many mass shootings, right?
Yeah.
And the idea of the horror that some people live through, trying to escape that kind of violence. But the methodical, slow pace
Yes.
that they go, just even that first thing is they shoot the white girl
They
first.
shoot the white girl first.
I mean, that's always struck me. But at first, it's like, "Ooh, this is going to be a good book." This time, they shoot the white girl first, which means there are others who are going to get shot.
That's right.
And of course, we know that. But even with the rest, they can take their time. I actually underline the passage. May I?
Yes, you may. Yes, you may.
It's still at the very beginning. Lampless and without fear, she could make her way. And that is, oh God, this is talking about, I'm sorry. That is, I've got to go back to that, Chantel. There was something, it was about, I wanted to make a point with the pacing but I think that's the wrong reference. So I'm going to go back to that later in the conversation. I'm sorry. I'm so wanting to get that there, but this isn't the space that I want to do it.
Right.
Here, I was just talking about, again, the just the slow, deliberate nature, even going in the rooms, like, you see, what did I tell you? This is going to be that. And those aren't even, it's a truth you make up. And I think about the idea of paradise. When, especially today, like in today's society, how many of us would love to create our own little utopia, prove that we can do it better? We know there are powers that be that are trying to do that, but I mean, how many of us hold that kernel like, well, if I had it, I would do this? And then how do we avoid dipping over into this same kind of authoritarianism?
Yes, this is such a great question, and I think it's one of the big questions that Toni has us wrestle with. And I also was thinking a lot about this question in this time. I think that there's something very human about us that would love to jump at a chance. We have our reasons why. Everyone's reasons might be different. And we are creating. We're creators, right? So I think that appeal of being able to create something and nurture it and grow it is very appealing. And I think it's the thing that Morrison cautions us against, because in every utopia, you're disqualifying people. It's an exclusive off the bat. And I find what's interesting in the first two books, you had a lot of broken families, a lot of fragments. You had fragmented people that formed relationships and tried to be family and do family. But in the fragments, there was trauma and you didn't, and they didn't have healing, right? And then when we get to paradise, you actually have intact families. You have families, you do have those who have fragmented aspects, but you have these core families, these core groups, and they have such principles around them. And when they have a choice to create their community, what I found really fascinating was the fact that they excluded light-skinned people. That I think the most dangerous person to them were light-skinned Blacks.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, when it was first, because Toni doesn't tell you anything straight, right? So you got to read hanging on there with her,
right?
Yeah, hanging like
you got to read her. You have
to read her
Yeah,
with your
yeah.
full attention. That's what she
This
requires.
isn't calling words. This is
Woo!
reading. Yeah.
Yes. And so I was like, wait a
I
second.
think that was brilliant
Yes.
because when you say reckoning,
Mm-hmm.
when we look at this, we have to look internally, right? And
Yes.
that's what we do. But we
Yes.
have to look internally. It forces us to do that. I think about, and I think about what the quote I was going with in that was how safe women were in this
Mm-hmm.
time. And that's what I say, lawless and without what did it say? Lawless and without fear, she could make her way. So that's the lady getting up at night
Yes.
just because she wanted to, going on the
Yes.
porch, going for a walk down the street because she is not prey. They pride themselves on that. It's beautiful, right? Who would not
Yes.
want to do that for their family or the people they love?
Mm-hmm.
And instantly, when something challenges that noble idea, that perfection, they have to become prey
Yes.
necessarily, not just excluded, but you turn into the monster you're keeping out to
That's
make
right.
sure the monster you
That's right.
imagine does not influence, not so much get in, but just influence what's going
Influence.
on. And I thought that that was really huge because, of course, we know as dark skinned people making their way through Oklahoma, that trauma from being rejected by their
Mm-hmm.
own was, wound up in their own bylaws, whether written
Right.
or not, and that
Well, what they
to a certain
decided
degree is
not to do,
very possible, right?
it is, but what they didn't do was they didn't reconcile that. There was no attempt of healing that. It just
Mm-hmm.
it's they were like, oh, this is when we have our place, here's what we're gonna do. And you're right, it created its own monster,
Mm-hmm.
and its own systems, and it was very stifling, and it was one of the things that led to this demise. So for those people who have not yet read
Mm-hmm.
Paradise, there the two main kind of settings is Ruby, which is an all black town,
Mm-hmm.
and then there is the convent, which
Convent.
is the convent, which it used to be a convent, and now is just a safe, or I would say a
Mm-hmm.
space, a home for wayward women, for women who need it. It's a space of rescue. And what if you, in another read, I would want to separate all the scenes that relate to the convent,
Mm-hmm.
all the ones that were in Ruby, and what are the distinctions. Two things that I noticed off the top, and I know there's more. The conversations are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The conversations are much more intimate, much more exploratory, in the convent, much more free,
Right.
freer.
Exactly.
The women are much more expressive. And
Depth
it doesn't mean it's
to them.
tidy, it's
Yeah.
messy in the it's
Mm-hmm.
very messy. And like a public school, whoever comes, like
Mm-hmm.
there's this adaptation and change that happens when new people come, in the way, and it's much more communal and caring. Even if I don't like the person, they're still doing acts of care, even if I don't like them. And the other
Mm-hmm.
thing is, in this way of just their behavior or how they speak, we don't know what race these women are.
You don't know.
We don't know.
And is
So,
there part of you trying to figure out like now, ooh, that sounds black, that
right.
sounds,
That
and
sounds
then it
black.
just
That
doesn't
sounds,
matter,
yes.
right?
It doesn't matter. But I also think it shows, like, well, Chantel, what do you think is black? Or what do you think is white? Or, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Why do you think this one's, like it has you, she allows you to question yourself and make
Mm-hmm.
observance from yourself, which I think is so clever. And then the opposite of that, also a huge distinction in the convent, is you don't have men are not staying and ruling. It's not a man's world.
It's not a
It's not
man's
a
world.
man's rules.
It's
And the men that come, they're not coming to stay.
mm-hmm.
They're not invited to stay. and the
Right.
women are okay, you know what I'm saying? Having okay with that. And in Ruby, it's the exact opposite. A lot of the conversations are about rules and judgments and regulations
Law versus
and
grace, almost. You
exactly,
know.
exactly,
Hmm. Yeah.
exactly. And
I.
even when you look at the younger generation, the couple that got married, right?
Hmm.
All this progress, that we've made to be able to have women who could have luxuries to just grow flowers in their gardens just because the
Yes.
flowers are pretty. I love that scene. I love that scene. And then to get to a point where you're forcing a marriage
Hmm.
for politics, basically,
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I wonder too, like if there's even room to wonder if that is like human nature to go
Mm-hmm.
back to this rigidity, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh
And
yes.
move away from what God or spirit
Mm-hmm.
demands of us to be loving and accepting of all. I
Mm-hmm.
think about back to your opening statement about this being a novel of reckoning, right? And we confront racism so much. Toni Morrison is so wonderful to center the Black experience
Yeah.
as a real deep experience. And this one, we look at oppression very square in the eye that is still showing up in Black communities, and that
Yes.
is the patriarchy and what happens from it, right? My youngest brother swears that all oppression comes from the idea of patriarchy. Like patriarchy is the foundation, and from it is where everything else blooms. Which leads
Yes.
me to wonder about this, right?
Yeah.
Because the problems that they even blame on the
Mm-hmm.
convict women are of their own making.
Yeah.
Katie nephew, who is just a young man, right? But
Yeah.
it's his sorriness is because he's allowed to be, because he's a man in there, right?
Yeah.
It's allowed to be. That's the thing. He's going to be protected because he's the last man standing
That's
of
right.
that family.
That's right.
And of course, the town is named after his mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that allows him to get away with all sorts of nastiness. And then
Mm-hmm.
I think again, like you say, the women, even before it was a convent, we have to remember that it was the hideaway for that,
That's right.
wayward man. So, a house of ill repute in the strictest sense of the
Yes.
words. So much so that you have the leftover, the remnants of that. And it's almost as if it was baptized or cleansed
Mm.
by these nuns who come in,
Mm-hmm.
who had an issue themselves when it
Mm-hmm.
became the school for Native Americans, and they're trying to strip them of their own heritage
That's right.
and their culture. But it wasn't until you have the last two standing, Mother and Connie, and then these random, you know, displaced and very complex women show up
Mm-hmm.
and give it this wonderful and amazing life when they are able to come together, but when they're given the space to, when they are led by a woman who has now pulled herself back together, and
Right.
assumed her rightful role in leadership, she can whip the whole thing around.
Yeah.
And you even see the
Yeah.
women from Ruby change when they come.
Exactly.
You talk
There's
about
a
the
drawing.
conversation,
Yes.
even the language, the way I speak, not just what I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about, but the freedom with which I
Mm-hmm.
can say my words.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think you picked
Yeah.
up on something that I never explored, conversations and language in the
Yeah.
two. And that's now I got to go back and read it again. Like,
I'm telling you, I think your brother is onto something. I would say that I agree. There is one of my favorite slave narratives is Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. And
mhm,
I remember, I think it was like my third or fourth time reading it. And I was paying particular attention to the master's wife,
mhm,
who was not the center of the story, but I was really focused on her. And I think it was in that reading, I was like, you're oppressed too, but you don't know it, and you can't say it. You can't have, because the system of having all these little mulatto children running around, and you can't do anything about it.
Nothing.
And you became a torturous villain taking your rage out on Black women, you know. But I think the closer you are to white in this country, white, male, Christian, land owning, right? That definition has put structures in place. Yes. Yeah. And everything under that has experienced the weight at some levels. I am not saying that she experienced the same type of weight and oppression. And I think that one of the things that as a people group, we have community around that shared experience that helps us to be able to navigate it, to protect our joy, and things of that nature that I think that white people struggle with, because they don't see themselves as a people group, and they don't. So some of these shared things,
right?
I don't know if it translates. And so I think that in what we see here is we see these men, because you heard the stories that Pat, the teacher, the historian, you really in the founding families, we heard from the men. We knew a lot about the men, and the men made the decisions, and the men did those things. And they were doing it from their very best intentions.
Right.
You know?
The very best intentions, and were successful.
And were successful. And were successful. They wanted to protect their women. The women wanted to be protected. They wanted to say, sweetie, you're not going to have to clean and some white persons or cook at some stove. The women wanted that too. So I think like systems and structures start off usually for good reasons and good intentions.
You know? It doesn't start off horrible.
Right.
It's just when the greed gets in, right?
Exactly.
When we pervert it.
Exactly. When we pervert it. And one of the ways in which, especially as the novel goes on, that we can see that it was really perverted was in what I call moral certainty. You just had this certainty that this is the way that it has to be. This is the only way that it's successful. This is the only way that is right. And that certainty snuffed out curiosity. It snuffed out individualism. It snuffed out so many things. And it made Ruby an unattractive place for people to want to grow and be. You know, you had all this conflict between the generations. And I love the conversation about the oven, which was the most historical element and symbol in their community. And this conversation about what was written on it. And there was no one that was able to, first of all, honor like the fact that like these young people are having a conversation about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And Beaver Furrow was proud.
Like Beaver Furrow.
Yeah, I'm like, Beaver Furrow. Not the Furrow. We wouldn't,
And it's just such certainty. And even the certainty about what I wrote down, like one of the things that I wrote down was that they were certain that women that don't have children, meaning they hated children. Something's unnatural with them, right? Because there was certainty that, as a woman, of course you're going to want to be a mother.
Even when they saw the little bowls by the things that were cut out, like look at them feeding the idol.
Yes.
Just know until they go in and say, oh, there was a spider web. This isn't even used.
Right.
And having,
Right.
I
There was
think
also certainty
something
about, if a woman enjoys sex.
right,
Okay.
exactly.
Because as women, especially in those
The
times.
certainty
Yes.
of a woman's autonomy as a
Yes.
dangerous thing.
It's
That is
dangerous.
it's a threatening thing. Like
Yes.
that is what threatened those men
Yes.
without question.
Without
Woman's up in there having an affair. The son's up in there. Gigi just shook the whole town up. Really,
Gigi.
Gigi got off a bus and turned it out.
Gigi got off the bus. I could see
Yeah.
the whole
But what I
scene.
loved about it, she knew Gigi was very much aware of her sexuality
Yes.
and the power of it and could
Yes.
embrace it. But when she saw the picture of the woman's breast on a platter, how that just shut her down. Like
Yes.
even seeing how you might be viewed reflected back to you in a safe space by women, like it just changed something in her. And I thought that was like a huge conversation too. Like, what does that mean in terms of going from a confidence to a sexualization? Like, you can be confident and do you, absolutely. But when you realize someone is looking at that as sexualization, like it was just this immediate turn off.
Right.
I wanted to say about the certainty also, the certainty and the importance, and I'm very curious to get your take on this, of history.
Yes.
Because the young people, back to the oven and what the original message was and how that became a debate. It made me, that was something that I really had to think about. Like, we, especially in Black History Month, we hold on to history, but like to what end?
Yeah.
Do we hold on to history to say history? Do we hold on to history not to repeat history? Do we hold on to history to get better each time, to build and to grow? And I said, that is something that I wondered, like, that's something I probably need to wrestle with as an individual. Like, there's some parts of history I just want to spew out and revel in and be proud of the people who made it. But that also absolves me from having to live in such a way or to act with that same courage, because it's been done. And let's go ahead and we can talk about this. And, that's safety for me. Yeah. But if I'm very honest with myself, and this is, this is back to the reckoning and the self-reckoning, like, then what is my next move? Like, that's an example to propel me to the next step of greatness, and how to make the story, to keep the story unfolding and not just being retold. So
that's right. There's so much to that. Some of it, my first answer, I was like, I don't know if we can talk about that here in this space. I don't know. But I would say that I think when we idolize something, and when you idolize something, it's unhealthy. You have an unhealthy attachment to it. And it's almost a cemented attachment to it. And it makes it difficult for any other newness, as far as, perspective, or, the way in which people want to engage it, or freedom to how to move with it. It becomes so distilled. I will share something with you. I did not really. So I went to a non-HBCU. Did you go to HBCU?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So this is great. This is great. Here we go. So, and my husband did. And after we graduated and we're, thinking we're fully grown, we were at a party or something. And it was, Black people. And they referenced like, oh, you went to a PWI. I had to think about it. And we were all like, a PWI? What's that? We had no idea. I'm talking, we had graduated from college, okay, and had no idea what a PWI was. And then we later learned that a PWI is a predominantly white institution.
Right. I know exactly what one is.
And so it's interesting because I think that, you know, in a way, there are things that are in our history that we hold up as sacred cows, like this oven. And it's not that it isn't sacred, and it's not that it doesn't have its place, and it's not that it doesn't do its job. But when it becomes something where there's exclusion, or when it becomes something where there's hierarchy and better than or less than, or, you
More
know,
real than,
that's what it is in this HB. You're less black, they're more real black.
Yep.
These are the conversations, these are the current conversations that I think Black people, Black folk need to be having. Because and I think that this type of conversation would fall under an oven conversation. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I think that what Morrison has done is she has set up a situation where she's laid it out so convincingly in the story, the necessity to have these conversations and to look at ourselves. I appreciated where really these 3 books were really, no, this is about us.
Right.
This is about us. This is our agency. This is us dealing with stuff that our dirt, our bad thinking, our bad habits. And
they were honest.
Yes.
They were painfully honest.
Painfully honest.
Right. And I think that's one thing that resonates so tremendously with me. Like, besides their exquisite language, right? And her unquestioned skill, the nod to history and its ills and trauma. Like, we can put the fist up and be, yes, someone said it. But then if you read deeply and truly, and you learn to grow from it, or you seek to grow from the book, something I think that this broadcast has led me to do, like, not just getting caught up in the language of the story, but how am I actually growing from it? What is the logical next step for me? And thank you for, you know, putting that lens on my reading now. Then you have to look at the uglier sides, or the messier sides. I won't even call them ugly, like, because we're human. And I think that that's one thing that this shows, even when you look at the range of women who wind up at the convent. What it shows is, you know, a heterogeneous mixture of people, which is humanity, right?
That's right.
And you have them coming from all over. You got the rich, you got the poor, you got the abused, you've got, you know, the more free, as opposed to having this rigid structure imposed on you by one way of thinking, that homogeneity, that if you try to live like that, is doomed to failure, if for no other reason, when you have the separation between the generations.
That's right.
That in and of itself is a heterogeneous mixture. I thought something also that was interesting was, and we have to remember the setting, the time. So colorism was a real thing.
A real thing.
And I think we moved a long way beyond that, but I don't know that it's 100% gone, but it's definitely not as in your face as it was when I was growing up. Like, it was a thing. But when you see people who have made it, they are now comfortable, and now they're not going to get involved with those things like civil rights. I'm not going to touch that.
That's
because
right.
we are fine right here. We are in our paradise. We don't need to go mixing with all that. That is one of the realest things. I was like, woof, that resonates even right now. Like, to what degree do I stand up in this moment? Right.
Yeah. Well, that's I was going to say, you bring up a good point. I mean, one of the things that I appreciate, and I was trying to find it, was somewhere in the beginning, they were talking about how they knew that they could rely on themselves. that there was such a commitment to covering, that if somebody was short something, they knew that, hey, we have this person. And there was this responsibility that I thought was very beautiful to have. But the responsibility, I think, was forged out of necessity. And necessity for safety, necessity for progress. And to your point, if you don't have anything else outside of necessity that is forging you together, then as progress is being made, you know, your need and your feeling of responsibility to be to be a participant in a caring community, it erodes. And I think one of the things that has affected us the most is affluence. You know, when people make it, whatever they define that making it to be, and I can be self-reliant. And that and we're living in a time and in an era where they're more probably, and I don't have data, so no one quote me on this, but they're more self-reliant Blacks than definitely there were in the past. And we also see a different response. I was having a conversation with my sister, and I was like, where are the like the people that have made it, the people that do have stages and megaphones, where are they in speaking out against stuff that's happening? Like, our artists and athletes were so vocal during the civil rights movement. But we were still, I think, needy. We were still, we hadn't arrived yet. You know what I'm saying?
Our artists were not enjoying what our artists today enjoy.
Yes. It's kind of like, because some of the stuff I'm like, I'm sorry, it's tone deaf. I can't actually pay attention to this over here because this stuff going on over here. And so I think that there is community, but the community that we see forming is more community around class. And art, it's you know, maybe around class structures than something else. And when you feel like, one of the things I wanted to kind of circle back to, and you said it before, which was safety. And you were talking about safety, and we were talking about community. And I have Stephanie and I are finishing up talking about Parable of the Talents, and one of the things that we were talking about was community, because that's another you know, story where the protagonist creates this community and this belief system. But in this book it says, like a fool, she believed her sons would be safer than anywhere in Oklahoma outside of Ruby, safer in an army rather than in Chicago, where Easter wanted to go, safer than Birmingham, than Montgomery, Selma, than Watts, safer than Money, Mississippi in 1955, and Jackson, Mississippi in 1963, safer than Newark, Detroit, Washington, D.C. She had thought war was safer than any city in the United States.
That's something, right?
That just was like...
And she was not necessarily wrong.
Wow.
That's the thing. Like, you understand why she thought that. Especially when you start talking Deep South, as in that time. But just because they died in the war does not mean that she was wrong, you know. And I think that's the thing we can't discount, because, like, a mother knows, right? Like, you know where your child needs to be. If anybody knows, the mama knows. And I think that's what I really love Toni Morrison, because she says that hard thing that we really need to see, that we know, we feel as a community, but it's sad for those outside the community who read it to come in and see the trial of the community.
Exactly.
Even while we have to examine ourselves, right?
Exactly.
So it was safer for her son to be in the army than those cities, but it was safer for those women to be far away from that safety.
Exactly. You know, and that's the point right there. That's
That's
the
it.
whole thing. It's like, it's safer. There's such a focus of safety. There's such sense in safety, which is why, hey, let's band together. Let's not make this journey and set up
Mm-hmm.
and establish this, community on our own. All of that makes sense and is so safe. And yet in all of this safety that's being constructed,
Mm-hmm.
and the ways in which people think, well, women were this, if we do this for women, then they'll be safe. But there was no checking of the men.
Right.
There was no checking of the men. And then after it had, like, the horrible massacre, because that's what it was,
Mm-hmm.
happened, their men weren't, they weren't really reprimanded.
I was just saying there was no accountability.
There was no accountability.
Chantel, what do we see happening right
That
now? That is
me
the
off.
indictment. So obviously, this is what we are seeing before our eyes.
We
is
are,
nothing
yes.
new. This is what happens in patriarchal societies. Men can do what they will, include kill.
That's right.
At will. I love Toni Morrison's autonomy as a writer. She deals with a heavy thing.
Yeah.
That murder shook me so badly. But then afterwards, when those bodies couldn't be found in that Cadillac, like the whole point of being a writer is that the world is yours.
The world,
you can do what you want to.
That's right.
And then to make that disappear and to come back, it's like this thread of the supernatural that goes in again.
Yeah.
That whew, so that even while you wrestle with all this heavy stuff, it's like there is a hope.
There is
somehow in all of this. There isn't out yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't shot the gun. Don't shoot. Like you get one more chance. Back it up and move on and do this all over again. Don't mess it up the second time. So,
I think too, one of the things that I appreciated with, especially with the character of Pat, who was treated differently because of her color in this town. And she was harmed by that. And that was just really interesting, how she flips that. You know what I mean? Because obviously colorism is real, and we have our stories, but as a lighter skinned Black, I had a different experience. And I was aware that I had a different experience than some of my friends or, some of my cousins. But I think reading where it was flipped and the harm that happened hit me in a different way. It hit me in a completely different way. And I loved how she does that, how she flips things. So it's like, hey, sit in this seat. You know what I'm saying? Let's do this. Let's not talk about the white man so much and their racism. Got that. Let's focus on what is happening here within. But I also appreciated that you had this woman who didn't have the ability to treat her daughter with grace and understand, because of her thing, to be the historian, to try to grapple and how she was moved in the reading and remembering and trying to capture and make sense of things.
Yes.
And I love the fact that it wasn't just she was the historian. She wasn't just the teacher, that she was moved emotionally by this remembering. It's almost like she was able to see, like, oh my gosh, what happened in the past, and to how it was brought forth in the present, and the things that she went through. And Toni doesn't offer us she offers us hope, but she doesn't offer us,
what do we do with it?
Nice endings.
Right. What? No,
she doesn't offer
a fairy tale.
No, she doesn't offer
It's
us
not.
hope. She
Um,
offers us, yeah.
yeah.
She offers us hope, but not nice endings.
So there is right, exactly, and there's work, and even in the hope, it is up to the people we've harmed to
Mm-hmm.
forgive. Right?
Yes,
They still have that power, right? You
that's
might
right.
want to, um, but that's that. I think
Yeah.
that back to the historian, it goes back to my question: what do we do with this history?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm glad you pointed that out because I don't even know why I didn't try to connect those two. But that is something that I think I'm going to be wrestling with a little bit, like the
Mm-hmm.
purpose, even celebrating histories. What
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you even talked about, how does this apply now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you're human. My question, how
Uh,
does this book help you understand what it means to be human right now?
it helps me understand the absolute necessity to hear people, to understand their backgrounds, to have mixtures in society. I'm
Mm-hmm.
now so afraid, like, I don't know that before reading this again that I was so opposed to going out and starting a Ruby. Sounded like a good idea last week. I'm not even going to kid you. But now I'm like, and of course, and even when we work with wonderful people, and I know that there is value in that, right? And I
Yes.
know that we can't let the dominant society who has decided
Mm-hmm.
this is the way it's going to be limit how we
Mm-hmm.
actually move in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, America itself is Ruby, right? You
Mm-hmm.
have your founding fathers who are trying to keep in this one particular way or one particular line that when I think about even how we interpret Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in a modern framework, the same way
Mm-hmm.
purists go back to try to deny that modern framework. So we have to come up with a shared language, and our conversation um,
Mm-hmm.
has to be free and open and real and messy, like that in the convent, right? And so
Yeah.
I think in this moment, it just helped me understand the need for the heterogeneous community, for the
Yeah.
multicultural society.
Yeah. That's really rich. I was sitting with this question, and at first I was like, why did I ask this question? This is a hard question for me to answer.
Because you have the best questions in the
But
world,
I
right?
was like, this is really hard with this one. And I think there are a couple things. One, and your brother would appreciate this probably most, is around patriarchy. I don't know. I think about these men who I don't want to say were bad men, because
Yeah,
I think that would be wrong. And
I
I
agree.
didn't experience them, you know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? And as bad men, you
Hmm.
know? And I wonder what role, because I do think that women have a role in promoting and keeping alive unhealthy aspects of inherited patriarchy or masculinity or whatever. There's so many terms for it. And what does it look like in, and I'm not talking about in antagonizing ways, but to
Hmm.
try to point out when that rises up in you. You're a good man. And I know you, because I could say, because I know you. But I wonder if you are aware, right?
Hmm.
When you're, if there's any tendencies that rise up in you because you are male in this, and it's just, there's certain things that you might not even be aware that you do,
Yeah.
right? So I think we have extremes of men. I think we have these really toxic bad men that are really kind of, but all the weren't like that in this book. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And so this is the kind of group that we can influence and work with. There are some workable men in this group, right? And what does it look like for us to be able to talk about it in our homes, you know, with our children? There's such antagonistic relationship going on between the genders. You know, how can we move? That's not a helpful strategy. So that's one thing.
Intentional listening in your home.
Yes, that's right. That's one thing that I was thinking about, because, and I don't know if this is true yet. It's something I'm thinking about. One of the things that this book, I think, one of the lessons is women are only as safe and as healthy as men are. I have to sit with that. You know what I'm saying? Because what I'm saying is they did get away. Mavis did get away from her abusive husband. You know what I'm saying? They did have a separate space from men. They had that. They were self-sufficient, right? They weren't reliant, you know, on them. And yet unhealthy men cause violence, harm, and death.
Yes. Absolutely.
You know, and so I think like that the why should we is because we need our men healthy.
Yeah.
We need our men healthy.
There's something when you ask that, I think about the twins. And how it wasn't until after, you know, at the end that one defied the other.
Yes.
And I think about your question just then, when there might be some things you miss, but there are often things we see.
That's
myself included, where
That's
I'm silent in certain spaces. I certainly have been. I'm less now. Not so much because I'm, you know, just now this in right person. I'm just older. I'm more confident in me.
Right.
But I think especially in younger years, there's a danger of the group thing, especially in these oppressive systems.
Yes.
So many times I know I've been in conversations that I should have shut down. I mean, I knew it about 2 minutes in. And even now, you might have to say something that really gets me, depending on how much I want to engage with you. Right. So that is, now I got to sit with that. Thank you, Chantel.
Yeah. So, and what I'm hearing you say, which I really appreciate, Sean, is like, yes, women need to be able to show, but men need to be able to do some policing and be accountability structures as well. I think that's great. I think the other thing that I thought about as far as the question of like, what is it helping me to understand about being human in this moment, is I think that my human need is to feel safe. I mean, and my human need is to also belong. We are designed to belong.
Yes.
And my human need will say, well, that which is like me, you know, perhaps makes me feel safer. And I think that I think that belonging gets tied to conformity. And we need to be aware of that conformity, sameness doesn't need to equal belonging. And that gets back to your point about like diversity and things that you are. It really is this idea of the church, come as you are. You know what I mean? And I also think that not to come as you are and be who you are. There was such healing that happened more in the convent because women were able to be themselves.
Just be.
Whatever version, they were able to be themselves. And I, with Mavis, that first one, that was a hard one for me. And I was judgmental of her.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff because she, you know, she left the kids.
But Mavis, I just love. My heart
and I just was like, wait a second, you know, wait a second. you're doing it again, Toni, where you're making me. And then it was like, but when I just saw her and just accepted her story, I was just, it was, you're right. My heart just opened up for her. And so I think we have all of these guards, all these different things that we establish to how we check people out, and to kind of like, how dogs go around sniffing butts, like, are you on my team? Like, we have our own way of shifting through people. And
we're
whenever
socialized to judge,
yes,
from our lens of what paradise is, or what acceptance
exactly, of
is,
what paradise is, and also because of what Christianity should look like. Because these were Christian women. They believed in God.
Bingo.
They believed in God. But so you have rules over the body, rules over the faith, rules over everywhere there's rules. And if it doesn't look like, if you're not worshiping the way that I think you should worship, then you're not a Christian.
Missing the whole New Testament.
Missing the whole thing.
The whole thing.
But how true is that? Like, it's so, it's so true.
I want to say one more quick thing. When you just talked about safety and belonging, I think about that was really something. When you think about people who join gangs,
yes,
there is belonging. There is this idea of safety, but it is not safe, and there is a very violent exclusion.
That's right.
To people who otherwise you would belong.
That's
so
right.
That is like how we even define belonging and safety in a subcontext. There's so much to go through with this.
There's so much. And people will belong to anything to be able to belong, and will justify it.
I belong to all of them. There's more to say. That story.
Yeah. And I think that the last thing that I would say, I think that this book is calling to me, is to move through life with a lot less certainty and a lot more tenderness.
Toni Morrison knocked certainty out the water, I think.
Out the water. Yeah. Out the water.
Like over and over and over again. It's just
out
like,
the
what
water.
did I do?
Yeah.
This might need a part 2, at least with us, behind the curtain, because I want to talk about symbolism and the number 9. I want to know, that's my line number, by the way.
Oh, okay.
The number 9.
The number 9.
The 9 chapters and the 9 men that go there, the 9 families. Like,
yes,
I need to get into that with you, but that'll be.
I would love to do that. We will definitely make some time to do that, because you can't exhaust this book. I wanted to share with you before we wrap up, to answer your first question about Toni Morrison and my thoughts. And so I think, one, when you read, and I have been very blessed and challenged this month in particular, to read writers who took seriously their craft. These are master storytellers, Toni Morrison. And then, as I said, I just have gotten out of Octavia Butler, who's just another master storyteller. And I think that their works are part of the canon, our canon, and really should be part of the canon. And because, and I also just think these are such great works that should be a part of every family's shelf for history. That this is such a great way to not think through, but feel through history.
Bravo for that. Yes.
Because you are not able to think through these works, and even when she mentioned things that it's like, oh yes, I know that this happened and this happened in history, I'm feeling my way through. And I do think that they help us to after you're done, like, consider yourself, your space, your influence, the agency that you had. Am I a convent home in myself where people can come? Am I safe? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where people can come.
Mm-hmm.
Do I require conformity to my ideas and belief in my life and my values and my choices for people to be able to come, you know, in my home, in my space, at my table, in my parties, to have my attention, for me to respond back to a text. Like
Yeah.
it's all on, kind of those levels. So I think that the aspects of what I um I know why I struggled. I know why I put her down when I put her down in, like, I
Mm-hmm.
think my 20s. And it wasn't because I think it was difficult for me to follow, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what most people assumed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, because she's a tough writer, right? Toni Morrison requires your full attention.
Your full attention.
Your full attention. And then again, let me go back. You know what I'm saying? I felt like I needed a family tree, a map. I was like, oh my Lord. Then I'm getting older, Sean. So it's like my memory. Let me write that down so I don't forget it. Her long
Right.
cast of characters.
Oh,
I'm like notes going to school.
notes even for pleasure reading.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Like here, like notes going to school for real. And I think the reason why I think I put it down is because of the content.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Heavy.
it's heavy. And I've been
Heavy.
talking to people
Yeah.
who like, oh, what are you reading, Toni Morrison? And they're like, oh, girl, I just can't, and I get it.
Yeah.
And I would say to those people, like me, get yourself a friend and ask them to read it with you, like what happened to me. It's been such a gift, Sean. Thank you for
Always.
not only just telling me to read it, which I've been, like told to read it, but for reading it with me. And I think that like that's been the difference of going on this journey, because I'm telling you, I would have stopped after Beloved. I would have taken a long pause. And now I'm starting tomorrow, Sula, which I've never read before.
That's my baby brother's favorite.
Is it? Okay.
Oh my God. And my mom's favorite.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good one. All of them are
Okay.
fantastic.
Okay. Okay.
I want to thank you for, reminding me why I love Toni Morrison so much, but for pushing the conversations and making me go back and read with another view in mind. And I'm very excited to go back and ask myself these deeper questions.
Yeah.
And it's always another layer that I think that I can just go searching in here. So thank you for that very discerning eye and that very thoughtful reading that you do and sharing.
Yes.
So openly. I appreciate it.
Yes. We did it. Toni Morrison. We did Jazz, Beloved, Paradise. Jazz is still my favorite.
Yes, that's my favorite book in the world.
Jazz is still my favorite book. So definitely, if you have not read any of these, read Jazz. I definitely am gonna read that one again. I want to read that one with my girls too. I think that there's a lot, there. Slow walk that one down with them. But yeah, go do that. And next week, or not next week, actually on Thursday, we will be back in this space with Stephanie to finish up the second part of Parable of the Talents. Yes. Have you read that series?
No,
Parable?
I'm gonna read it and join you all's conversation.
Sean, yes, you have to.
I'm definitely going
start with Parable of the Sowers. That one you do need
Okay.
to read, start with Parable of the Sower.
Okay.
Yes, and then when you finish that one, call me.
Okay.
All
we
right.
need
to talk about. You're gonna need to talk about it. We'll like Stephanie and I can get together.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yes.
We'll have a things meeting.
Yes. That's right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the show notes below. And until next time, you guys, you know exactly what to do. Stay reading. Bye.